Welcome to the Fit 15 podcast show, where you'll find health and fitness inspiration, motivation, and information shared in 15-minute episodes. Tune in while getting a move on to make leading and enjoying the benefits of a healthy lifestyle almost too easy. It's the Fit 15. And now your host, Catherine Basu.
Welcome to the Fit 15 podcast show. I'm your host, Catherine Basu, and I'm really excited for today's episode, which is kind of a flashback to something I used to do on the Fit Armadillo Facebook page back in the good old days of Facebook. So if you don't know about Fit Armadillo, that's my fitness company. It's the sponsor of the Fit 15 podcast show. And on Fridays, probably the first year I had the Facebook page, we would do Fitness Fact or Fiction Fridays. I've since discontinued that weekly post, and the Facebook algorithm has become a little prohibitive for you to be able to find something like that if I were to post it. But sadly, some of those myths that were myths I covered 5 years ago are still myths that are believed to be facts, and so I'm really excited to have Makeba here, my guest today, to help us debunk them. And also, for those of you who were there back in the beginning years and took my advice to heart and already are going to know about some of these myths, Makeba is going to share some great resources to help you figure out what you can do to kind of research some of these things that you might hear about in the gym or from your friends. So I've mentioned her name a little bit here, but my guest today is someone I'm really honored to have on the show. It's Makeba Edwards, and she did not put this in her bio, but Makeba is a bit of a fitness celebrity because she has contributed her knowledge so frequently to a lot of the materials and things that those of us in the health and fitness industry use. So maybe the general public doesn't recognize Makeba Edwards by name, but if you are in the health and fitness industry, I can almost guarantee you've read something from Makeba before. So keep an eye out. You'll probably notice her name a lot more now that you're tuning into this episode, and I'm making a point of you looking out for her. But that's because Makeba has spent over 17 years working in the health and fitness industry. She has her master's degree in kinesiology with an emphasis in sports performance. She's also a corrective exercise specialist, a VivoBarefoot running technique master coach, has presented continuing education content in group fitness and personal training. And while Makeba currently teaches multiple group fitness formats, including barre, boot camps, and several pre-choreographed formats in the San Diego area, her passion and love for fitness began at a young age on the island of Antigua, where she grew up. So welcome to the podcast, Makeba. I'm so excited to have you as my guest today.
Thank you very much.
So one thing I find, I've been in the industry for a little over a decade, is that there's always these myths that seem to come up in the fitness industry that just keep being passed from, one client to the next, and
Yeah,
it can be really hard to break them. So
yeah.
could you share with us, how do we navigate that
hmm
initially, I guess? Like, how do we know if something's a myth or not? Where can we try to get some insights onto something we're trying to research?
Well, there's a lot. Oh man, that's a lot of. There's a lot of places that you can go for that information. One thing I always say, it's very good to consider your source of
Mm-hmm.
information because, look, in a world where information is just so readily accessible, I have this personal school of thought where information is there, but sometimes it's the wrong information and people don't know where to get the right information.
Mm.
So that's my personal school of thought because I see it so much, and I always say, and being in this industry, you think, okay, well, this information is out there. You should know that this is absolutely not true because it's been in circulation and it's been debunked so many different times. You should know this, but the reality is it's not the case. So one thing I always say is, one, definitely look at where your source, who your source is, and where you're getting this information.
Mm-hmm.
I always say if it's a printed article, if it's something that's online, maybe on social media, check the source. Is the person citing maybe a research article or maybe a reference or an expert, a qualified expert in when they're discussing whatever that topic is. Definitely question that research or question that information.
Mm.
The other thing is it's important to maybe pull information from scientific journals if you have access to that information, and it depends on how deep you're wanting to go. So
Sure.
you have a number of different articles and periodicals you can pull from. If you're a person who loves to who gravitates to information research, you can go to things like Google Scholar or PubMed, and that's really, really like detailed, like research content.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking for information, it's kind of that second party. You can pull from organizations like ACE or from other fitness, well-known, credible fitness organizations that's putting out quality content for the general population.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to that, if you're looking for maybe getting more information on the person who's sharing that information with you, let's say that they state that they're a qualified professional. There is a website called the United States Registry of Exercise Professionals. It's usreps.org. And if you're wanting to determine whether or not the person you're hearing information from is a qualified professional, as they say they are, you can put their name in and see, oh, they're certified with this particular accredited certifying agency. In addition to that, I mean, you can go to Idea Fits, which is another organization, and you're familiar with Idea. They do have a lot of articles that they place on their website for consumption. There's another website that I'm familiar with called www.fit-pro.com. And that's PFP, Personal Fitness Professionals. That's another one. You can sign up for a lot of these organizations. You can sign up for their newsletters, and you can definitely be assured that there's good quality information. For nutrition, I know we're not going into details into nutrition, but for nutrition, there's an organization called it's the www.eatright.org from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and it's the largest organization of food and nutrition professionals. So these are a couple of different resources that you can pull from for quality information. But I always tell people, question the information that you're getting.
Right.
So yeah, even me personally, one thing I learned from doing my master's is that even though you're reading a research study, you still have to question and measure the content or measure the evidence of the information that you're reading. So even then, it's important to do that and then weigh the information that you have.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. No, it can be tempting to just
It
go along with it,
can,
especially
yeah.
if we hear a few people telling us the same thing, right? But
Yep, that's true. Yeah, definitely.
so I know we don't have a ton of time to chat, but Hi friends, it's Catherine, and if you are joining us and using this episode to help you get in a 15-minute out and back walk, that is your halfway point reminder. We're 7.5 minutes into the episode. You want to turn around now. All right, back to Makeba. Said you were going to get for me a few myths that you hear a lot that are actually myths, just to help us, maybe get some of them out of the way for people. So can you share those with us?
Absolutely. So 3 really common ones. I'll just highlight them for you, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
One is, and you've probably heard this, and every woman has heard this or felt this fear of becoming bulky from lifting weights or lifting heavy weights, or women should only lift a certain amount of weight. And we hear this all the time, and it's still circulating. And I will say that even though this is a major deterrent for a lot of women. That's the first thing. They want to avoid resistance training and stick with the cardio. And really, that's not the case. Okay, I'll just put that out there.
Yeah.
As a woman who is maybe taking or adding rather a weight training routine or strength routine to their workout maybe 2-3 times a week, bulkiness is not something you should even worry about. Because the reality is women have very low levels of testosterone, and the high levels of testosterone, is what is needed to really build that kind of muscle size that you see that men have. And women do not have that. And that is, bulkiness is something that it's not going to come about, particularly with women who are going to just train for 2 to 3 times a week. Now, what tends to happen sometimes is where that quote unquote bulkiness happens is where someone maybe has changed or engaged in their fitness program, and perhaps their poor nutrition habits and the nutrition habits haven't changed, or your intake hasn't changed, and that's where that kind of thing can appear to happen.
Got
But
it.
ultimately, if you're managing your nutrition, meaning you're consuming the right foods to fuel your body, balancing with cardio, and you're adding that resistance training, you're not necessarily going to get bulky. Now, I know that there are a lot of women out there who are bodybuilders, you know, those athletes, they have all the big muscles and the vascularity
Mm-hmm.
from much weight training. And honestly, those are unique cases where those individuals train for those events for years and years and years. And it takes a lot of eating and supplementation and maybe training up to 6 days a week
Mm-hmm.
in order for that to happen. And that is not the norm. So the average woman who's coming to you as a professional who says, I really want to lose weight and I really want to, and the term we hear is, I want to get toned.
Right.
You know, that's the term. And 2 to 3 days of resistance or weight training is so important to the workout program, you know, because you have so many benefits that you get from that. So I'm gonna hit you with the benefits,
I
because
love that.
I
Yeah.
think the benefits outweigh what people think, you know, this quote unquote bulkiness is that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So one, there's physiological and your physical benefits. So physiologically, number one, I this is my favorite part. It releases endorphins. I call it your happy hormone.
Mm-hmm.
And this basically reduces stress, anxiety, and depression. These different, you know, life overtakes us at times. And honestly, adding weight training or just physical activity in general increases your endorphin levels, and it you know, kind of changes your overall outlook and mood in life.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, it helps with sleep patterns, helps you to rest a lot more effectively. It helps reduce bone density, reduce the risk of osteoporosis and
Mm-hmm.
osteopenia by building bone density. And why that's important is because as women, and even just as human beings, as we age, these different structures in our bodies deteriorate, particularly bone tissue. And as we get older, we run the risk of falling, fracturing bones, and so on. And it's been proven that incorporating maybe a lifestyle of resistance training or weight bearing exercise will help to reduce those things. And it's not to say it's to solve the issue, or it's going to say, or that it won't ever happen, but it
Mm-hmm.
definitely reduces that risk and improves function. And ultimately, if you're a person who has a weight loss goal, when you are able to build more muscle tissue, your body's able to metabolize or break down fatty tissue a lot more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or a lot more efficiently as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, especially I know when I have clients who are like either they hit menopause or they're about to, I really try to
Mm-hmm.
encourage them because that's, you know, when they see
Yep.
their friends that just gain a bunch of weight, not changing
Mm-hmm.
anything, a lot of it's because they didn't include that strength training, which has those benefits that they really want.
Yeah. Yeah, it does, and it has long-lasting benefits throughout your entire life. And it's not just about aesthetics, because for some people it begins that way, but it's really about the physiology of it all and how it's going to benefit you in the long term.
Love that. So that's
Yeah.
myth number one. What's another
Yeah.
myth that is out there?
Okay. This is a big one, and I kid you not, I think I've heard this in the last like 2 years or so. Muscle turning into fat and fat
Oh
turning
yeah.
into muscle. That's a big one. And
Yep.
you know what? I can understand where the confusion can be with that, because unless you're into sort of understanding anatomy, it just, you know, you don't have a point of reference.
Sure.
So the muscle and fats, they're two different structures and tissues that exist in the body. There is absolutely no way that either can turn into the other. It's impossible. So so I just have to state that clearly. It is impossible for that to happen. So your muscle is essentially your lean tissue, and then your fatty tissue is your non-lean tissue. And you have, like, I won't get into the fatty tissue too much. You have your subcutaneous fat, you have your
Mm-hmm.
adipose tissue, you have, you know, your intramuscular fat. There's so much to it. But in general, that's just not going to happen. But the reality is, when we think about the muscle and what people experience when they cease strength training over a period of time, and let's say they become sedentary, or maybe they had surgery and they're not able to be as active as they previously were in terms of strength training, the muscle begins to atrophy. So that means the muscle is going to weaken, and then it also reduces in size. So that's what's happening there. It's
Mm.
not that the muscle is turning to fat, is that the muscle becomes, I guess you can say, for lack of a better expression, less present, so to speak, because it's
Sure.
weakened and it's reduced in size. And then what happens when and I think I had said this earlier about fat being metabolized more efficiently when you increase muscle size. What happens when fatty tissue or fat cells decrease is that's when, you know, you're having, and I'm talking about those who maybe have lost weight, are able to build muscle. But what
Mm-hmm.
happens is that the fat is not turning into muscle, but what happens is you're building muscle tissue and there's a growth in muscle tissue, and therefore your body's ability to burn fat becomes more effective. And that's where it's going to be beneficial for people with weight loss goals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just another reason that we need to do some strength training, right?
Exactly. And I'll say this other thing. It's not to say that, because I know it can be thought, oh, I need to resistance train to lose weight. It's not that you're just resistance training to lose weight, but it's a balance in programming, because it's cardiorespiratory exercise. It really helps with that weight loss. But it's not the only way, so to speak. It's and adding the resistance training into that component is what's going to help to metabolize and break down that fat more efficiently. So that's kind of how it happens, without going into too much details.
Sure. No,
Yeah.
and I think that's a good basis for people. Try to persuade them a little more with each sentence to try to.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I have to say, because I got into fitness through running, so it took me a while,
Oh, nice.
to go through my personal training certification to actually see that this was beneficial,
Yeah,
So.
no, yeah. And I know when we get into running, we'll talk about it. But yeah, a lot of runners do kind of shy away from the strength training component.
So I definitely get it, but now that I've
Yeah.
been on the other side, I try to get more people to come to the other side with me.
You're bringing them to the dark side, or the light side, I should say. I don't know.
Yeah. So, and then
All
you
right.
said a third myth.
I do. Okay. And this one I really like, because you hear it a lot as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's the concept of the fat burning zone, and it's the concept of working at lower intensities being more ideal for weight loss. So it's kind of two schools of thought here.
Yep.
And one thing I'll say is, okay, the fat burning zone, it does exist. Okay, let's just put that out there. But it may not be what people think it is or how they perceive it.
Right.
All right, so the fat burning zone essentially is where your body is primarily using fat as its source of fuel. And that's really at rest, even at sleep, even when you're sleeping. So you and me talking here and conversing, and maybe our gestures with hands, like I like to gesture with my hands as I'm talking to you, your primarily fat is going to be your primary source of fuel, and this is your fat burning zone essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, a lot of times when people reference it, they reference this in terms of weight loss, and you should work at lower intensities to lose weight. But the reality is, this quote unquote fat burning zone, like us sitting here and you're being in your using it as your primary source of fuel, it's not really effective for weight loss. Let's be honest, because you're really just sitting down and just talking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But what we're looking at here is, when we're talking about weight loss and we're talking about burning fat or whatever the case is, it's ultimately working at higher intensities. Is not to say that you have to work at higher intensities all the time, because it's really important to have balance in your workout, your program. But it's kind of recognized that if your goal is weight loss, ultimately you do want to add those higher intensity workouts into your program, because what happens overall is that your caloric expenditure, or the amount of calories you burn overall, will be greater and it's more efficient. And then at the end of the day, the amount of fat percentage that you burn is going to be greater than if you sit and just work at an extremely low intensity trying to achieve that weight loss goal. Like I said, it's about balance. So you can have your moments where you do your low intensity workouts. You can have your moment when you do your high intensity workouts, creating that balance, of course, being careful to be safe. But the whole concept of the fat burning zone specifically, in the context that people perceive it, is not necessarily what it is.
Sure. And and if we were trying to be in the best percentage wise of how much fat is being burned, we're working at such a low intensity that it's not going to burn enough calories to make a difference.
No, it's not really going to do much. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Yeah. So those are my 3 big myths.
Yeah, well, they're definitely ones I've heard as well, and I'm glad to have someone with more background to back me up on
Yeah.
disproving them. So yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks so much, Makeba. I know we're going to have you back for talking about running for our runners, so that'll be fun. But thank you for joining me for this conversation. And just briefly, I'll put all this in the show notes, but what's the best way for people to connect with you if they have any questions or just to learn more about what you have going on?
You can reach me via email, fitpromakeba@gmail.com. You can reach me via my Instagram, and honestly, I have to think about that one because I don't keep it on the top of my mind what my Instagram handle is. but I think it is, excuse me for a second.
No, I'm trying to remember
There
if I
we go.
remember it either.
It's Makeba Edwards dot Fit Pro. And then I'm also on Twitter. I'm more active on Instagram, but on Twitter, it's Fit Pro Makeba at on Twitter.
Yeah, and they should definitely check out your Instagram because, of course, I don't see every single post because of the algorithm, but whenever I see it, I'm
Right.
like, oh, that's a great exercise. I should use that with my clients so people can see
Yeah, yeah. I
where
try to
my
be.
tricks are coming from.
Hey, no problem. It's the way I look at it. I always tell people, this information is out there. You just have to find it. We all have good
Yeah.
information.
Yeah, but but definitely like some good, twists on things. Because some of the things I can't show with my clients because they might use some equipment that not every client has access to. So,
Right. Yeah,
um,
definitely.
but I love what you're doing there. So awesome. Well, we'll have to
Thank you
get
so
people to
much.
check that out, and
Awesome.
yeah, I look forward to chatting about running with you.
Excellent. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Fit 15. For show notes and more, visit fitarmadillo.com/podcast. See you next time.
Hi, friends, it's Catherine, and I wanted to remind you that there will not be a new episode of the podcast tomorrow, Saturday, but I will be back on Monday with Makeba talking to you about running. So definitely come back. And if you have not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do so you don't miss out on that. And if you are loving the podcast, be sure to head on over to iTunes and or Stitcher to leave us a review. It will definitely make my day. Hope you're having a great day yourself and enjoy your weekend.